Can you hear me, Your Honor?
Is this Mr. Huff?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I'm in a new box. I had to make a switch.
Okay, yes, you got a new background there. Are you ready to proceed?
I am, Your Honor.
Mr. Reed, are you here and with us, and are you ready to proceed?
I'm ready to proceed.
All right, we're back on the record, and Mr. Huff, you may ask your next question of this witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Reed, thank you again for your time and patience today and for answering my questions. I want to talk with you. Before I leave off where we were talking right before the break all about you and your board members and your staff acting in good faith and several questions to that effect. But just to kind of make sure I'm clear and to sum that up, you and your staff would make every possible effort to ensure that every vote counts, wouldn't you?
Yes.
All right. You talked during your direct examination at several points about transportation. And I want to explore that issue with you. I believe you referenced a bus line. What is your understanding of where that line runs in Alamance County?
It basically runs down State Highway 70, and I believe it has 4 or 5 branches. But the two municipalities that are connected are Gibsonville and Burlington, and there's a line that goes out to the community college.
All right. And earlier when we were talking, several times we discussed how we don't know, or you don't know, which exact voters in Alamance County might lack qualifying ID to vote, right?
Yes.
And so there's no way to know where those voters live if we don't know who they are, right?
I would not. I don't pretend to be an expert on that, but folks, transportation costs money, so areas of lower wealth would be more challenged.
Right, but my question to you was, we don't have any way of knowing where these voters who might lack qualifying ID live, because we don't know who they are. That's correct, isn't it?
Each one individually, they have. I have not identified who these exact people are now.
And we can only make guesses about where these unknown people might live or not live, right?
I think those are knowable questions. I am not prepared to give you a concrete answer on that because that's not my specialty.
Is early voting popular in your experience in Alamance County?
I believe since I have been on the board, it has become the most popular.
And do you have, based on your experience, do you have any insight into whether or not early voting is particularly popular among the African American electorate in Alamance County?
I think that it's probably equally popular. I don't know the exact breakdown by race on early voting turnout, but I would imagine it's equally popular.
All right. The bus system that you were telling me about at the beginning of our conversation about transportation, that's called the Link Transit System, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. I want to talk to you in more detail about that. It's got a hub in Burlington, right?
That's where it's the city of Burlington initiated the system.
And so it's got a hub in Burlington, right?
Yes.
And how far is it from Burlington to downtown Graham?
Probably about 10 minutes by car.
All right, I want to show you another exhibit. This one has been marked for identification as LX0225. This is a PDF of a pamphlet available on the Link Transit System website. Okay. Now you can, all right, so you can see there, sir, there's 2 pages to it. I know the first page is sideways, but let's start there. You can see that it's written, it's running sideways across our screen because it's probably intended to be a trifold pamphlet. Isn't that right?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Now that logo, you see there where it says Link in light blue in the top center?
I do.
Okay. Have you ever seen that logo before?
On the side of the bus?
Okay. And you've seen those buses around Alamance County?
Yeah, I live in Burlington, and there's one about 3 miles from my house. That's
Okay.
a stop.
And these are the same buses that you were describing just a few moments ago when you were telling me about the cities where they ran and the hub in Burlington, right?
That's the same bus line. Yes.
Okay. All right, so let's look at page 2 of this exhibit. All right. Do you recognize that that configuration of roads, that map?
Yes, it looks. I mean, there's I-40 going through. It's a little bit schematic, but if
And
that's
are
Burlington,
those, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I mean, I would assume the blue. I would think the blue line was the Gibsonville line, and the orange line is the community college line. The red line looks like it goes to the hospital, and the blue and purple are in Burlington.
Okay, and earlier when you testified that there were multiple branches, does this picture show those branches?
I believe it does.
All right, so let's look at the bottom of the page. You see there how there's 5 different tables, a blue one, a red one, an orange one, a green one, and a purple one. Do you see that?
I see that.
Okay. And if you look, and then you see how on the right of the map, there's a box with some print in it right there, superimposed right over the map.
Top right-hand corner.
Yes.
Text box. Yes.
Okay. That's got a phone number in it, right? And we might be able
hard
to
time
make it
saying.
bigger.
Yes, right above where it says linktransit.org.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that 336 area code's an Alamance number, right?
That's us.
Okay. And it lists the hours there as 5 to 8 p.m. at night, right?
8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday.
Okay, hold on. Bear with me just for 1 second. Okay, go to the top of the box. See the blue, the very first line in that text box says business hours of operation.
Yes.
Okay, 5:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. See that? There, she just blew it up a little bit. There you go.
Yes.
All right. Were you aware that that this bus system operated beginning at 5:30 in the morning?
I do not have the exact hours of the bus system familiarized, but
All right.
I knew that it was a Monday through Friday service.
And those hours, 5:30 a.m. to 8 p.m., that encompasses all of the operating hours of your county board of elections office, right?
That's right. We're open 8 to 5.
And if you look in this box indicates that the buses are also ADA accessible, right?
Link Transit is ADA accessible. Yes, I see that.
Now, do you recognize any of the bus stops that are depicted on this map?
Like I said, one ends in Gibsonville, one ends at the hospital, one ends at the community college, and one serves Burlington. 2 routes, 2 loops in Burlington.
Okay. And so you could use this to get from Burlington to the county board office in downtown Graham, couldn't you?
You could, I believe, that community college route has a stop at the courthouse, which would be a block or 2 from the Board of Elections office.
Okay. And there's a Department of Motor Vehicles office in Graham also, isn't there?
There is, on the just south of the interstate.
Okay, so you're familiar with the location of that office?
I am. It's about a mile and a half or so from the courthouse.
Okay. And the courthouse is close to the Alamance County Board of Elections office.
Yep. Yes.
And looking at this map, the orange line goes right by where that DMV is, doesn't it?
I believe that park and ride lot is a block or 2 from the DMV.
And that park and ride lot is one of the stops on the orange line, is it not?
It is.
Okay, so you could
According
use,
to the map.
so a voter could use this to travel between Burlington and the county board of elections, right?
That's true.
And a voter could use this to travel from Burlington to the Department of Motor Vehicles, correct?
Yes. Yeah, I
And
wish the Board of Elections and the motor vehicles were spread farther apart. That would allow the access to getting an ID more geographically available.
there's more than one Department of Motor Vehicle office in Alamance County, isn't there?
I'm familiar with where the license plate agency is and that DMV there in Graham. I will admit I do not know of another DMV.
But you don't know one way or the other whether there's more than one.
That's the one that I've gone to. I'm not familiar with a second DMV location in the county.
All right, so looking at this, the orange line stop there, the one that you were describing, the park and ride, next to the DMV. Do you see that that's over in the bottom right of the screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, and we're blowing that up for you now so you can see it. I could give it a minute there. But there's a little red icon next to it, right? Ah, there it is. Can you see it better now?
I can.
All right, it's got a little red icon there, right?
Yes.
Have you ever seen that before?
Yes.
And what is that to you?
I've not followed the efforts with that very closely, but my understanding is that it's a commuter route. Basically, people who work in outside of the county can take advantage. It's a Piedmont area rapid transit. As far as I know, you can get on you can commute along the interstate to other counties through that.
Okay, so that's a second bus line that connects to this link network, right?
I will admit my understanding of that is only that it links on the interstate with a commuter line. I am not aware that it has other coverage in the county.
All right, so I'd like to show you now another exhibit.
As a park and ride lot, it's for folks to drive there and then get on the train. Then get on the bus.
I'm going to show you another exhibit now. It's been marked for identification as 227. It is a PDF of a screen capture of the PART website, which is www.partnc.org, and it's entitled PART Regional System Map.
Objection,
Okay.
Your Honor. I think that Mr. Reed has testified that he doesn't have personal knowledge beyond what he's already testified to about the PART system. I'm not sure this is appropriate.
Give me just 1 second. The objection is overruled.
So, sir, I'd like to scroll down here a bit, show you that right there. So we're on the second page of exhibit LX227. The top of the page is entitled PART Regional System Map, right?
That's what I read.
Okay. And what I want to talk to you about is over there on the right-hand side. You see on that red line?
Yes.
It's got multiple stops. Do you recognize any of those?
Like I said, the one that I was familiar with was the one in Graham, off of 87 near the interstate.
Okay. And so the fact that that particular line has stops in Burlington, Graham, Alamance Community College, and Mebane, is that consistent with your understanding of what that part is?
I can read the map that you're showing me and see that Mebane is on there.
Okay, so as far as I just want to understand what you knew about it. So you knew that it ran to where? I know you know where the stop is, but where did you think the destinations were?
Again, my understanding is that it's basically an interstate commuter route where people can drive and park at the stop and then head to Chapel Hill. I was not familiar necessarily with where it ended up, but I knew that, again, as a Piedmont area regional transportation, that it was for folks who are commuting, public transportation for commuters.
I see. So you didn't know that you could take this from Mebane all the way into Graham.
I did not know that, no.
And help me with geography of your county, but essentially you've got Mebane on one end and Burlington, kind of Graham on the other end, right?
Burlington's pretty much in the center. Graham is, and Mebane's on the county line, and Graham is in between. Graham basically, I think, abuts Burlington. So so basically Burlington and Graham from the center to the east, and then you skip a little ways over to the edge of the county and you get to Mebane.
Okay. And so a voter could hop on this in Mebane, transfer and get off at Graham, and they'd be at that park and ride right across from the DMV, right?
Yeah, I don't know their hours and schedules. Like I said, I was my familiarity basically went as a commuter line to leave the county, but you've got the pamphlet there. You want to
and so
show
this
us what
is
it
now the
says.
second transit system that covers Burlington, Graham, and Alamance County, right?
I think cover would be a strong word. I mean, you again, it's you have the interstate corridor that has some coverage, and then up to the community college is also on the interstate. Really, Gibsonville is the only spur that gets you too far away from that interstate corridor. Again, I think I mentioned earlier the majority African American town of Green Level, which is probably somewhere between Graham and the Caswell County line. Definitely not on a. There's definitely not a. Once you get off of the interstate corridor, your public transportation options become pretty limited.
What do you mean by pretty limited?
Well, the transportation system goes basically along the interstate, including Gibsonville. But Gibsonville actually is not too far from the interstate either. So you have, large areas to the north and south of the interstate where the.
So is it your testimony that in areas away from the interstate, there is no public transportation in Alamance County?
I think there's a van service mainly for like folks going to the hospital. You have to, it's, compared to public transportation, I can't say for sure, but I think it's like my mom had considered using it. But it costs about $9 and you have to reserve it, and you are frequently on a route with other people going. So there, that I guess that's not public. That's not in the sense of the link transit system anyway.
How much did you look into that option before rendering your opinion about the limits of public transportation in Alamance County?
Into what option?
Into this van option that you're describing.
Objection, Your Honor. If I may be heard, I think that Mr. Huff is mischaracterizing Mr. Reed's testimony. as rendering some sort of opinion. I mean, he's just here as a lay witness, and is giving testimony based on his perception.
Since overruled.
I know that the link system was promoted as a actual public transit option when there was not a good general option for public transit previous.
I see. So you didn't fully investigate this van system before
Like I said,
forming your opinion.
Like I said, my familiar, it's basically to take people to the doctor's visits. It's not a regularly, it has no regular routes. It's you know, sort of a shuttle service, I guess you'd say.
Okay, I'm going to show you now another exhibit. It's marked LX228. It's a screen capture from the website acta-nc.com. Sir, can you see this on your screen?
I do.
Okay. See there, the title is Alamance County Transportation Authority, right?
Yes.
Did you peruse this website before completing your affidavit in this case about transportation options in Alamance County?
Other than the general familiarity I had with it beforehand, I made before my affidavit, no special research.
So scroll down a little bit, please. All right, you see our buses? See that little picture there?
Yes.
Okay, the one on the left. Is that the type of bus that transported your mom?
She was not a good option for her, but that, I mean, I see them around. That is,
Okay,
that
so
is.
you know that those exist in the county.
I know that those exist in the county.
All right, so let's scroll a little bit further, please. Keep going. All right, so now we're into page 2 of 3. All right, pause right there. That's it. Did you know that this bus system provides more than 300 transports around the county every single day?
Again, I only had the general familiarity with the service.
And did you know that it had a fleet of 27 vans and buses?
Again, I only have a general familiarity. I do know that it was for folks when the link transit system was introduced. It was to fill a void that this shuttle service did not adequately provide.
And you know that for certain, or you're surmising that?
I do not have a complete understanding of the Alamance County transportation system, but when it was adopted by the two municipalities, it was intended to meet a need that was not provided by the shuttle service, by the vans.
Oh. Now, we talked about the fleet of the 27 vans and buses, but look right below that. This thing will take you shopping, won't it?
I'm not seeing where you're referring to, but it's a shuttle service that you can schedule. I don't believe they have. I'm not familiar with all the details of the service, but again, I think you have to schedule a schedule. They do not have routes, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, so it's your understanding that it's door to door.
Yes, but
Right.
like
So
I said,
this-
I characterize it as a shuttle.
And it services and is available to all of the residents of Alamance County, isn't it?
I am not sure that it's countywide, but I could believe that it is.
And they essentially call and they make an appointment, and one of these vans will come and pick them up and take them to their destination and then return them later in the same day. Isn't that right?
That sounds reasonable.
All right, I want to show you number exhibit 229. We can take this one down. Okay, this is from the same website. This is the services tab. So you've never been to this website and navigated to the services tab where it gives the details of how this works, have you?
My only familiarity with it was when like I said, my mother looked into it to help her with doctor visits, and did not seem to be a good solution for her.
Okay, so the answer to my question is a no then?
What was your question again?
My question was whether or not you'd been to the website and clicked on the services tab to review the details of how the system works.
I've probably been to the website. I probably have not read through it thoroughly.
All right, so I want to look down. Let's scroll all the way to the bottom. Let's see, I guess the second to last page. You see there, it gives the cost details, right?
Yeah, that was close. I think I said 9, so $10.
$10 round trip, right?
Yeah.
And do you know if it's free if you're over 60?
Not familiar with that.
Have you looked into whether or not there are exceptions to the $10 round trip fare for people who are needy and can't afford a $10 fare?
I have not.
But you would concede it's certainly possible that a voter out in the countryside of Alamance County could use this service to travel to the Board of Elections office in downtown Graham, right?
As far as I know.
And they
Again-
could
again,
similarly
my-
do the same thing.
Again, my familiarity with the system is, I have no personal experience with it, but
But you have no reason to believe that it wouldn't
no reason to believe
carry
that-
someone to DMV, right?
Again, I'm not completely familiar with their services, but I would not be surprised, since it's a shuttle service that you can request to come to your home. It does not have set routes, as far as I understand.
Your Honor, may I have one brief moment?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. Okay, thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Reed, are you aware of the outreach requirements in Senate Bill SB 824 that require multiple mailings to every household in the state about the voter ID requirement?
I'm familiar with mailings that have gone out based on voter requirements. So I believe I may have received one myself.
Okay, sir, I don't have any further questions for you at this time. Some of the other lawyers might.
Mr. Cox, would you like to cross-examine this witness?
Yes, Your Honor, just very briefly. Hello, Mr. Reed. My name is Paul Cox. I'm with the Attorney General's office, and I represent the state and the State Board of Elections in this case. I won't take up too much of your time. Just for a bit of clarification, in your direct examination, you said that the Alamance County Board of Elections was issuing free IDs for a brief time. Is that right? It was really just a few months in 2019, right?
Yes.
And it stopped issuing those IDs because the state board instructed all county boards to stop issuing IDs because of a federal court injunction.
That's my understanding, yes.
And that notice from the state board went out in early January 2020.
I can't say for sure, but that sounds right.
Okay, so the time period during which the county was issuing free IDs was only in an off year, in other words, 2019.
I believe so.
And for clarity of the record, when I say off year, I mean an off year from elections, not a general election year, correct?
Right, a municipal election year, not a federal election year.
And during municipal election years, in other words, odd years, voter interest is not nearly as high as it is during even years or general election years.
Unfortunately not.
That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
All right, redirect examination, Ms. Bora.
Yes, very briefly, Your Honor. Mr. Reed, Mr. Huff asked you some questions about bus routes that stop near the county board office. Do you remember that?
I do.
And so to access the office via bus, a voter would need to know where the office is, right?
That's true. That's true.
And have you heard from voters that they don't know where the county board office is?
Objection.
Yes.
Calls for hearsay.
Give me just 1 second.
Your Honor, if I may be heard briefly, this is not being offered for the truth. It's being offered for his perception of the accessibility of the county board office.
Give me just 1 second. So could you repeat the question, Ms. Bora?
Yeah. Have you heard from voters that they do not know where the county board office is?
Okay, give me just 1 second. All right, the objection's overruled.
So I answer the question.
Yes.
Like I said, the desire for people to turn in their absentee ballots in person during the last election, the frequency of people asking me where to do that. Again, it's not obviously it's not a statistical sample of voters, but there was a marked increase in in that inquiry to me about the location of the board.
All right. And Mr. Huff asked you some questions about voter confidence. Do you remember that?
I do.
Based on your experience and discussions with voters and your role as a county board member, what is your understanding of the factors that affect voter confidence?
I think safe to say that the experience that the voters have at the election site, at the polling place, has a lot to do with their confidence. But I think there's a wide variety of issues at stake. I would say that that is an ongoing concern of the boards to instill confidence in our voting process.
And are there things that you've experienced or seen that might discourage people from voting or detract from voter confidence?
Again, the interactions at the polling site itself. For instance, we've just changed our voting equipment in this last year, and we have changed to paper ballots, hand-marked paper ballots on election day, and machine-marked paper ballots during early voting. That my sense from the public was that moving towards paper ballots was an important step in maintaining and building voter confidence.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Reed. I have no further questions at this time.
Mr. Huff, do you have any further recross?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Cox, do you have any further recross?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Reed, you are excused. You may leave the virtual courtroom. Thank you very much for your testimony, sir.
Thank you.
It's now about 4:30, and we have been stopping each day around 4:30 to allow for the introduction of exhibits. I'm curious as to whether the plaintiff has any further exhibits at this time that they wish to introduce, or whether we can go ahead with the next witness and work till 5.
Your Honor, we are about or have submitted the detailed descriptions of each exhibits, and Mr. Simons was prepared to do that today. We also have a witness who can start, but won't get very far.
You say Mr. Simons was prepared to do that. What do you mean that?
Mr. Simons?
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, in response to the panel's request at the end of the mass admission of joint exhibits yesterday, I recall the panel requested some additional information on the descriptions of each exhibit, as opposed to just the categories of the exhibits, the groups that I ran through at the end of the day on Monday and Tuesday. Plaintiffs put together a chart listing all of the exhibit numbers that plaintiffs, the exhibits that plaintiffs either moved in for evidence during the course of the direct examination of their witnesses, or were the joint exhibits that I moved for admission at the end of the day on Monday and Tuesday. We took the descriptions of each document that were in the joint exhibit list attached to the parties' joint pretrial order that the parties filed prior to the beginning of trial. And we plaintiffs circulated this new chart with this new information to counsel for the legislative defendants and the state defendants. And in response, the legislative defendants and the state defendants raised no objections to the plaintiff's plan, which is to submit this chart to your honors and to also upload stamped copies of all exhibits listed on this chart to the TCA link that I believe Mrs. Myers submitted over the weekend for uploading copies of exhibits that have been admitted. This special link for admissions, excuse me, exhibits that have been admitted so that they are grouped together for the record.
That's fine. And so the description of each exhibit really was for the clerk. It wasn't necessarily for the court, and I don't know that there's really anything that needs to be done on the record beyond what you have suggested just then, and that is that you upload those exhibits and that you have those brief descriptions which attach to the numbers, and make sure that the clerk gets that.
Thank you, Your Honor. We will be sure to move ahead with that plan and send a copy of this chart to the clerk. Would Your Honors also like a copy, or is that best achieved just by sending the document to the clerk?
That's achieved simply by sending it to the clerk.
Understood, Your Honor. Thank you very much.
All right. It looks like we've got then, without anything else, we've got about 30 minutes. Ms. Riggs, go ahead and call your next witness.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. My colleague, Paul Brockman, will be calling the next witness for plaintiffs.
Good evening, Your Honors. Paul Brockman on behalf of the plaintiffs. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Plaintiffs call Professor Kevin Quinn.
Is he in the waiting room?
He's been admitted.
Can Kevin Quinn hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right, great. I can't see you yet, Mr. Quinn. Let me see if I can move my... There. Mr. Quinn, if you would please raise your right hand. Ms. Beal, are you ready to swear in the witness?
Yes, sir.
All right, you may proceed.
Thank you. Do you solemnly affirm that your testimony to the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and this is your solemn affirmation?
I do.
Thank you. You can lower your hand.
Let me just ask, who will be examining this witness on behalf of legislative defendants?
Your Honor, Mr. Patterson will be doing so. Thank you very much.
And for the state defendants?
I will, Your Honor, Paul Cox.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cox. You may proceed, Mr. Brockman, with your direct examination of Kevin Quinn.
Thank you, Your Honor. And Professor Quinn, we've met before, but for the record, this is Paul Brockman from the Paul Weiss firm on behalf of the plaintiffs, and I'll be asking you some questions today. Could you please state your full name for the record?
Yes, Kevin Michael Quinn.
And Professor Quinn, could you please tell the court about your educational background?
I can. I have an undergraduate degree from Johns Hopkins. I have a master's degree and a PhD in political science from Washington University.
And are both your master's and your PhD in the field of political science?
They are, yes.
Thank you very much. Could you please now tell the court about your professional background and activities since you obtained your PhD?
Sure. So immediately after getting my PhD, I took a postdoc at Harvard. I was there for a year. After the postdoc at Harvard, I moved to the University of Washington, Seattle, different from Washington University in St. Louis, Washington, Seattle. And there I had a tenure track position in political science and also a courtesy position in statistics. I was there for, I believe, 3 years, and then I moved back to Harvard as a tenure track faculty member there in the government department. In 2009, I moved to the University of California, Berkeley, where I was a tenured professor of law. And in 2017, I moved to where I am now, the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, where I'm a professor of political science and a courtesy appointment in statistics.
And could you tell the court some of the courses that you teach in the political science and statistics departments at the University of Michigan, please?
Sure. So a lot of my teaching involves the subjects of political methodology and applied statistics. I'm a data person. I also teach courses on judicial politics, empirical legal studies.
And when you say political methodology, could you explain what that means?
Sure, I can try to. So political methodology is the subfield of political science that is primarily interested in questions of how to develop approaches to make inferences using data to answer substantive questions of interest to political scientists. So it's very much like the field of statistics, but applied to political science questions and problems.
And how does that differ from applied statistics or empirical legal studies, your other areas in which you teach?
So political methodology and applied statistics are very similar. One could think of political methodology as being essentially applied statistics that is applied to political science, whereas applied statistics generally could be applied to social science, medical problems, et cetera. I would say the field of empirical legal studies is really a field that looks at questions that deal with the legal system or the judiciary in some way, and uses typically quantitative, but in some cases qualitative, empirical approaches to answer such questions.
And do you publish articles, peer-reviewed articles in these areas of research?
I do, yes.
Have you served on any journals in these areas of research?
I do, and I have. So I can say a bit about my editorial experience. So previously, I was an associate editor at the Journal of the American Statistical Association. Currently, I'm a co-editor at the Journal of Law, Economics, and Organization. I'm currently on the editorial board at Political Analysis. I just came off the editorial board at the Journal of Politics. Let's see. Those would be the main things. I also I review a lot of manuscripts, but I review a lot of manuscripts for those journals because of my editorial responsibilities. But I also review a lot of manuscripts just as an outside referee for a wide variety of journals in political science, statistics, in law in some cases.
How is one selected to serve as an editor on the journals you just described?
So I can't speak to how the Journal of the American Statistical Association chooses editors, other than to say that the individuals chosen for editorial positions are typically people who are well established in their field. I can say a bit about how things work at the Journal of Law, Economics, and Organization, because the co-editors themselves, we regularly have discussions when someone steps off the editorial team. We regularly discuss who would be good replacements and then approach those people about coming onto the editorial team. And without revealing too much about those internal discussions, what I can say is that one of the primary criteria that we look at JLEA, the Journal of Law, Economics, and Organization, is whether an individual is viewed as a leader within their subfield.
Thank you. And have you received any awards for your research in your areas of study?
I have. I have. So, well, not technically an award. Well, I suppose you could. It's technically an award to the university, but I've received a number of grants from the National Science Foundation. I believe the total amount is close to $2 million. So I have to go back and look at my CV to actually tally it up. But I've received a number of awards, grant awards from the National Science Foundation to support my research. I'm also someone who's won the Gosnell Prize for the best paper in political methodology 3 times. And I was elected a fellow of the Society for Political Methodology in, I believe, 2018, a couple years ago. And there've been a number of other awards as well, but those would be the ones that sort of stand out in my mind at this point.
In your published work and in your research, have you used research methods that involve record linkage or the merging of data sets?
Yes, that's a common research technique.
And could you please tell the court how that work is utilized in your research and publications?
Sure. So, as I stated earlier, a lot of my work deals with trying to use data to answer empirical questions. And oftentimes the data that are required to answer such questions don't reside in a single data set. There might be, right, one part in this data set, another part in this data set. And what is required then is to take those 2 or possibly more pieces of information in these different data sets, these different databases, and to merge them together, being careful that the entities in one are accurately being matched up with the entities in the other.
And just to make sure I understand this concretely, could you give me an example of a paper in which you've utilized these methods?
Sure. I can give you a couple of published examples if you'd like. I can also talk about some ongoing research that I have now that might be also some good examples of that. So one published example that I can think of off the top of my head is a paper with Maya Sen and Kate Unkovic, where we did an experiment to see if.
I'm sorry, this is Marin. I didn't understand that name with Myosin.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. The other authors are Maya Sen, Mayassen. And then the other author is Kate, spelled Cait. Unkovic, Unkovic.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no problem. So let's see. So I forgot exactly where I was. I believe I was starting out saying that one example, a published example, is a paper with Maya and Kate, where we did what's called an encouragement experiment. We randomly selected a number of graduate students to receive an email encouraging them to apply for a technical conference. At the time, I was the president of the Society for Political Methodology. And so this was an opportunity to see if we could improve the representation of women among the conference participants. And the data that were merged in that case were information on the schools that the students attended, as well as information about the status of the student, both in terms of whether they applied to the conference or not. So there's a conference database that was part of it, but then also a separate database, which was a database that included an indicator of whether the student in question got the encouraging email or whether they did not get the encouraging email. And then the ultimate goal of that was to determine whether this sort of encouragement increased the rate of participation in the conference.
Let me interject for just a minute. Mr. Quinn, you are a fast talker.
Oh, I'm sorry.
If you can, I know it may be hard because we get into a habit of speaking in a particular speed, and that's just who we are. But to the extent possible, try to slow down just a little bit.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd be happy to try to do that. And please, if I'm getting excited about something, please feel free to ask me to slow down a little bit.
Well, that's the reason I am now. It's just Thank you very much. Just try your best. And it is hard, I know, because we all get into certain patterns of speech, but as best you can, try to slow down.
Okay, I will certainly try to. Thank you.
So, Professor Quinn, I think you were just explaining an example of one of your research studies where you used record linkage or merged two data sets.
Correct. Yep. Thank you. So there are some other published examples I could go through, but to give you another example that has a slightly different flavor to it, the current research project that I'm engaged in looks at citation practice in the U.S. Courts of Appeal. And a co-author and I were fortunate enough to be able to convince LexisNexis to give us all of their data for the last 45 years or so. So we have a database of all opinions published and unpublished from 1973 to 2018. And some of the things that we're interested in relate to how different types of judges with different backgrounds may cite cases differently. And so one of the things that we needed to do was to take biographical data from the Federal Judicial Center and match up that judge-specific data with the case data from LexisNexis and the Shepard's data from LexisNexis. And so that's a really big example where I don't even know how many cases we have, but I'm sure you have a better sense of how many cases were decided between 1973 and 2018, and matching all those up with the judges on the panels. I could go through some other examples as well. So another example, current research, is a paper I'm working on with a grad student here where we're looking at the perceptions of truthfulness in various statements about COVID-19. And so there we have a database of fact-check statements, and then we did a survey to elicit people's views about these statements. And so we needed to join up the information about the statements with the information on the individual survey participants as well.
Thank you, Professor Quinn. And voting processes or elections?
Excuse me, Mr. Brockman, you froze. So if you could re-ask that, please.
Certainly. And can you hear me now? I do see that I am frozen on the screen.
I can hear you, yes.
Okay. Professor Quinn, my question was, have you published or performed research and analysis of the type you were describing in the areas of the implementation of voting processes or around elections?
Yes, I have. So I can provide some additional information on that as well if that's useful.
If you wouldn't mind just telling the court briefly about some of that work, that would be helpful.
Sure, absolutely. So one example of that is some work that I've done with Jim Greiner, where we conducted an exit poll in Boston. And as a result of that exit poll, we got a lot of individual level data about people's experience at the polls in Boston in 2008, I guess it was. And for some of the analyses we did, we wanted to look at how characteristics of the polling locations or the precincts were related to various outcomes. And so we needed to join the information at the polling location level with the individual level information from the exit poll.
And prior to this case, have you been retained to serve as an expert witness in any other cases?
I have. Yes.
How many times?
I believe twice in litigation and once as an expert for the court.
And can you tell the court briefly about the nature or the subject matter of the cases in which you were retained?
So they were all various types of voting rights cases, which I could provide more detail if you'd like.
And Your Honor, I'm seeing some more glitching on my end. Can you still hear me clearly?
Well, I thought I was until just then. I think what's happening is our computers are just extremely tired. It's close to 5 and they're probably ready to go home. Now I can see you. You got 10 minutes left. We'll see if we can patch you through here to the end.
Okay, I will do my best to leg it out, Your Honor, and I appreciate you bearing with me. Professor Quinn, you mentioned,
I said that tongue in cheek, I'm sorry.
Professor Quinn, you mentioned in which you were retained by the court. Is that correct?
Yes, in one situation.
And can you explain briefly the services that you were retained to provide?
Yes, I can. So this was a case in district court in South Carolina, and Judge Margaret Seymour had a situation where, as I recall, it was a vote dilution case. And she had two experts who were looking at the same data, but doing very different analyses and coming to very different conclusions. And she asked me to answer a few questions for her to just give her a sense of some background information to help her make sense of these very different conclusions that these two experts were coming to in this particular case.
Have you been retained to serve as an expert witness in prior cases involving photo voter ID?
Yes.
And could you briefly describe those cases?
I can. So the first instance of that was the South Carolina voter ID law, which I guess would have been 8 years or so ago, maybe a little bit more. And in that case, I was asked to weigh in on the reasonable impediment exception in the South Carolina statute. I was also an expert in the Curry litigation, HB 589 in North Carolina. That would have been 5 or 6 years ago.
To your knowledge, has any court declined to qualify you as an expert witness?
No.
And to your knowledge, has any court excluded any of your expert opinions as
Mr. Brockman, you have sort of faded out there. That question was very patchy. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Your Honor. Are you able to hear me?
I am now. And I'll tell you that this on your picture on my screen, there is popping up a message that basically says, several times it's done this, that says, due to either low bandwidth or overuse of the CPUs, I think it said, there's such as CPU or RAM use. That's the reason that you're having problems with the connectivity. I don't know if you've got other apps open, other people on your Wi-Fi, that may have something to do with it. You may be running too many things on your computer at the same time. You're probably much better at all that than I am. I'm just telling you what I see on the screen.
Your Honor, and I wonder if the staff, we're trying to clear extra folks off WebEx. Would that be helpful as well?
I don't think that the number of people on the WebEx platform itself has as much to do with it as it does each individual user's computer and where they're located. That's where I think you run into issues. Ms. Myers is still on here, but Ms. Myers, is that your understanding?
Judge Poovey, this is Kelly Myers. That is my understanding. Is the I believe when there is an issue, it's from that individual computer or the unit, and not necessarily the application of WebEx.
Right. So I guess that's a lesson for all of us: is try not to have too many things running besides the WebEx application on your computer when you're using it, and that probably will help something. So if you've got emails open or other things you're running, that's probably the reason that or that, or your bandwidth, obviously. It's close enough now to 5 o'clock that we probably can go ahead and stop for the day. This is as good a time as any. So maybe tomorrow morning when we start back, we'll have a fresh start. Mr. Brockman, have you had any issues seeing anything or having connectivity issues throughout the trial thus far?
I have not, Your Honor, and I am in the office on a hardwired line to hopefully avoid some of these issues. But just seems to be my luck that it's acting up as soon as we started this examination. So we'll refresh the computer and try to come back with a better performance in the morning.
That's fine. Again, you're not the first, and you probably won't be the last that has similar type issues. Are there any matters that we need to discuss prior to recessing for the day?
Not for the legislative defendants, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr.
Not for
Counsel.
plaintiffs, Your Honor.
Not from the state defendants.
Thank you, Ms. Riggs and Mr. Cox. Mr. Quinn, we'll see you back tomorrow morning at 9:30, okay?
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you.
All right, we'll be in recess then until 9:30 a.m. tomorrow morning. Thank you all.